Okay, good morning, everyone. Would like to call the meeting to order March 18th, Committee of Bar Examiners. Ms. Nunez, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Alex Lawrence,
Here.
Dr. Bolton,
Here.
Robert Brody, Dr. Cow,
Here.
Alex Chan,
Alex is here.
James Efting,
I'm present.
Kareem Gangora,
Present.
Dolores Heisinger,
Here.
Judge Herman, Michael Asiri,
Here.
Larry Kaplan, Paul Kramer,
Here.
Esther Lynn, Bethany Peak, Vince Reyes, Judge Torrealba, David Torres, and Dr. Wilcoxon. So we don't have quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 9 attendees.
I believe Mr. Kaplan did not respond here, though I see him on the screen.
Yeah, I responded.
Alex Chan just joined, so that would make 10 for your quorum.
Okay.
Okay,
All
great.
right. So we have quorum.
Great. Thank you. So as noted on the agenda for today's meeting, public comments during the meeting will be limited. Members of the public wishing to comment were encouraged to submit written comments prior to the meeting to ensure that the committee would have time to consider those comments. The committee has received and read all the written public comments, and we thank you for that. The committee coordinator will attempt to call members of the public in the order that they appear. To facilitate hearing as many members of the public as possible, I encourage you to not repeat points that were made by previous speakers, and to allow the committee the time needed to deliberate on the important topics that it will be discussing today. We will be limiting public comments to 2 minutes per person. Now, the logistics for raising hands is that if you are participating via Zoom video, you should have a function for virtually raising your hand. It's a hand icon and should appear at the bottom center of your screen. If you wish to make a public comment, please click on that. For those of you who are participating by phone, you may virtually raise your hand by pressing *9. That's the star key, then the number 9. We will call members of the public in order that they identify raised hands, and will enable the microphones of the speakers. Ms. Nunez, do we have anyone wishing to make public comment?
Yes, we have Mr. Benjamin Cohn. Mr. Cohn, when you're ready.
Hello, thank you. I wanted to comment to bring to your attention that a number of examinees from February 2022 have approached me and relayed to me some disturbing experiences from the February 2022 exam relating to the proctors at many different test sites. Many of those approved for testing accommodations say that their proctors did not know about or honor their accommodations on the exam, and equally disturbingly, some of the proctors were not wearing a mask or they were wearing a non-compliant mask with what the policy was published to be. I got a public record saying that the mask requirements for proctors were less than for applicants, which may have led to some of the confusion, both of what they were told applicants were required, as well as by the proctors on site, as well as what the proctors were wearing, but at least some of the proctors weren't even complying with that. There were other proctor issues relating to distribution of materials after the timer had already started, and related implementation issues that recurred at multiple test sites due to script issues. And I just think it was a widespread theme that really needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alex, that's our only public comment at the moment. We have no other raised hands.
Thank you, Ms. Nunez. Seeing that we don't have any more public comment, we will move to the next item on our agenda. 0100, approval of the January 28, 2022 Committee of Bar Examiners public meeting minutes. Do we have any comments from the committee, or do we have a motion?
I move to adopt the minutes.
This is Mike. I'll second that motion.
Ms. Nunez, can you take vote?
Yes. Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Judge Herman,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn, Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Vince Reyes, Judge Torrealba, David Torres, and Don Wilkinson, Dr. Wilkinson. All right, the motion passes.
Thank you. The next item on our list, 0101, review and provide feedback regarding procedural proposals that may affect future Committee of Bar Examiners meetings and activities. Just to give a little bit of background, and then I'm going to ask the Vice Chair, Mr. Kramer, to comment as well. In February, the officers of different bar entities were contacted by the Executive Director via email that the meetings procedures review was in process, as well as some other proposed changes. The email is attached in 0101 for your review. And as I mentioned, the Vice Chair, Mr. Kramer, did connect with the Executive Director, the Bar Executive Director, Leah Wilson, and compile some more information, collect some more information. And I don't want to put any words in his mouth, but I would love to have Mr. Kramer comment more on this particular agenda item. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kramer.
Okay, so carrying on the thought you were just leading to, it became clear to us that if we waited until after the proposals were circulated, we wouldn't have time to come back to the committee and get your feedback, and in order to fill out the survey that was going to solicit our comments. So with that, we're bringing it to the committee today, not knowing everything about what the proposals are going to say, but trying to, as best we can, get your feedback so that we can properly represent you when the survey is presented to us. And there's a series of topics that were contained in that email. We originally started out in January. We were going to present a public comment policy for the committee to adopt, so that we would have, we would have some certainty as to how we were going to handle public comment at every meeting. But then we were told that this consultant was working on, among other things, looking at how the various bar entities handled public comment and was going to make recommendations. So we put our proposal on the shelf. But it's the second attachment to today's agenda item for you to look at. The idea there being that if you like the policy that we were working on, we can at least compare whatever the consultant recommends against that and comment accordingly. I think that it's fair to say going back to the issues in the order that they're presented in the agenda, the clearest question is about in-person meetings. Ms. Wilson was proposing a standard in which each entity would have, and I don't know if this applies to the Board of Trustees or not. I will say that I've been watching a couple of their latest meetings in connection with the strategic plan that I'll talk about in a few minutes. And I did not sense that they were happy meeting via Zoom. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they don't meet in person, perhaps more often than this. But Ms. Wilson was proposing that for committees such as ours, at least, we would meet no more than 2 times per year in person, and the rest would be conducted via Zoom. That is, of course, only if the waiver that we had been operating under continues in effect, and it is currently set to expire at the end of this month. And if we were to try to have Zoom meetings after that, unless the law is the exemption is extended or the law is changed, we would have to list the locations from which we were participating on the Committee of Bar Examiners agenda, and we would have to make that location available to the public if the public wanted to come and to watch us participate in the meeting. So for those of us who are retired and don't have offices or don't have offices that really want us to be conducting bar business at their location, that would force us to make our homes open to the public, which is I don't know if anybody is happy with that idea. I certainly am not. But and in that connection, because the bar is faced with the expiration of that exemption, you've probably received an email this morning asking you to take a brief survey about your feelings about how we can deal with the loss of that exemption for our upcoming meeting in April. Donna, do you just want to? I did not start the survey because I wasn't sure, if I could stop it in the middle, and so I don't know what the questions are. But Donna told me that there are 2 of them, and I certainly will encourage all of you to take the survey after the meeting to make your thoughts known. But Donna, can you sort of put that survey in context for us?
Certainly. As Paul correctly stated, under the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act, if that, sorry, let me back up. So as Paul stated, the executive order that allows us to do the meetings this way, fully remote, without noticing the locations of each of the committee members, is set to expire at the end of March. We have reason to believe that it won't be extended, that deadline won't be extended by the end of March. We are aware of legislation that's pending that may very well put back into place some or all of the same procedures that we're operating under today, but we really, I'm doubtful that would be enacted prior to the end of March. We're just talking about a couple of weeks now. And we know we've got a number of committees that will be meeting in April. And so there's actually only one, and I apologize, Paul, I said 2, there's only one substantive question on the survey. The first question is just asking what sub-entity you're with. And we're just polling folks to get a sense of how we might best conduct the April meeting. Are people, do people have locations for which that we could post the location on the website, on the agenda, that would be accessible to the public, where the public could choose to attend from. If not, another option is having members come to the San Francisco or Los Angeles state bar offices and working from and continuing to do it via Zoom. One of the things that we'd like to continue to do is keep a Zoom option available because we do for the public, certainly, because we think it actually provides much greater access for the public. And so we don't want to eliminate the Zoom option. And so an option could be that you would come physically to the state bar offices in LA or San Francisco and participate via Zoom. You wouldn't be able to be in the same room because the audio feedback would be too much. Or, sort of a series of options, the final one being, if that doesn't work, then we would have to be doing it in person, but it would have to be in Los Angeles because of the way that the Zoom, we've been able to integrate Zoom with the audio in the Los Angeles conference rooms, but not in the San Francisco office. So it's just asking sort of what options are available or your preferences so that we can figure out very quickly how to notice the meetings in April. This group is not meeting until toward the latter part of April. We have some sub-entities that are meeting as early as April the 6th. And so we need to get a notice out by the end of next week. So we'll need to make those decisions very quickly, certainly for those sub-entities on how to set up the April meeting. And we'll sort of keep everyone else apprised as we know how long before we have an answer to the question of whether or not the procedures that we're acting under currently will be put into place permanently.
Can I add, this is Larry Kaplan. I just want to add another fact. If you participate from home via Zoom, your home has to be ADA compliant. So that means if you live in a old house with steps, or, you have a porch and you have steps, unless you have a ramp, unless you live in an apartment building where it's ADA compliant with elevators, your home cannot be used as a remote location.
That's after the exemption expires, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification, Larry. I just sort of offhandedly said accessible, but yes, that's exactly what I meant by that, that the location be ADA compliant.
Okay, so that's coming up, but the question that Alex and I are trying to present to the committee is the longer term question. Would we be happy meeting in person only 2 meetings per year? And conducting the remainder in whatever non face-to-face way that the bar comes up with. Donna, if you could make a note to shoot me, if there's a recording, a Zoom recording that was using the LA office in the way you described, I'd be curious to look at it. Just shoot me a note. Because I will say, in the past, for some reason, I looked at a meeting either of us or of the board of trustees via the old way of recording meetings in the meeting room. And that thing was horrible. As much trouble as we had in that room, if those of you who remember, making sure our mics were on, half the time you couldn't hear the people that were participating. So I'm encouraged to hear that maybe the LA meeting room can allow us to use Zoom, but also meet in person without the feedback issues that would come if we were all sitting in front of our laptops and speaking into them. Because I will note that one of the key goals of the upcoming strategic plan is to increase transparency and make it easier for people to attend meetings of the bar and its sub-entities. So then the question is, how do people feel? Alex, do you think we should handle these one at a time rather than me prattle on for about 20 minutes and then people start, offering their opinions?
Yeah, and thanks for asking. So I saw Ms. Heisinger raise her hand. So I think, we should call on individuals first to see their thoughts and then circle back to you, Mr. Kramer. So Ms. Heisinger.
Okay.
So I have just one comment and one question. My comment is that I'm grateful to the chair and vice chair for bringing this to the committee before decisions are made, and that we just find out about it afterwards. So thank you for giving us at least the opportunity to discuss this in a meeting. My question is, I didn't see a very convincing or super clear rationale for moving away from in-person meetings when the time comes that we are able to do so. So I still have that question.
Well, some of the factors I've listed in the memo, I think the biggest one is cost, I suspect. That was certainly cited. And the bar may have gotten itself into a position where now it's used to not paying our travel expenses. And so they consider that to be an added cost, rather than just cost savings that they've been able to enjoy over the last 2 years. But I think that and then maybe secondarily is the transparency aspect of, if we're all on Zoom, like if you forget to unmute yourself, nobody is going to hear what you said and nobody's going to miss it. Whereas, in the old days, in our meeting rooms, you could be heard by those in the room, even if you forgot to turn your mic on. But for the recording, for those people who were reviewing remotely, they didn't hear anything. And we're going to talk about, the amount of effort people have to put in to monitor our behavior in a few minutes. But I do agree. It is very useful that the public can either live or by looking at a recording a couple weeks later, see what we have done. I frankly use that to keep track of the strategic planning process. So if we have the technology in LA that merges, or works well with Zoom, so we can all sit in a room together, but people out in Zoom land can also hear us and can speak to us without having to travel to the LA office or be on even on the Zoom all day. That's a good thing. And, I'm in favor of that. I'm just personally, I'm not in favor of, these meetings. They don't work as well, or perhaps at all, in building, relationships among committee members. We can't have conversations during breaks, many different conversations. We just sort of lose touch with each other, and we just become a voting body that, votes on things that are fed to us without an opportunity to effectively bond and become a cohesive working group.
Oh, can I add a couple of comments here to Dolores, to respond to Dolores? I think one of the things that we also need to recognize in consideration of this, of the recommendation, was that we have been successful in meeting and making big decisions here, given a remote environment. For example, right before COVID, we would have never thought to, for example, conduct a calibration session online. Question selection seemed like it would not be feasible to occur in person. We were able to successfully accomplish that for at least 3 exam cycles. So I raise this because it's not like the in-person meeting has been that really unsuccessful. We agree that in terms of collaboration and the bonding and informal discussions that occur are not happening. Yes. And also in terms of, it might need help in terms of the engagement with the material. But I think that the recommendation also comes from the perspective that we've been able to accomplish a significant amount of work in a remote setting. I just-
because we had to, yes.
So I'm just looking around, other comments from the group, then Paul, circle back to you, like you wanted to kind of look at and address certain aspects of the memo. But first, are there any other comments or questions of Ms. Peak?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my comment was, I guess, kind of just, since you're asking for our opinion, I am not in favor of the continued Zoom meetings. I think that for a group like ours, where unlike staff or when people are in law firms or wherever you work and you're constantly communicating with your coworkers all the time, it's a little easier, I think, to conduct your business regularly via Zoom. But a committee like ours, where we meet at certain determined intervals, we're not talking to each other on a weekly basis. Back when we were having the in-person meetings, it just was a world of difference, and able to, when I had questions, the subject matter experts were right there. So on the breaks, I could run over and ask a quick question. If, someone had sent an email that I didn't respond to, they would just tag me at lunch or, shoot me a message or whatever. And since we've gone remote, it's just been far more difficult for me, at least personally. One, in terms of an engagement level, but also in terms of just making sure that I'm understanding all of the information that we're going over. It's just really difficult. And it's starting to feel like we're just, coming to these Zoom meetings and just being asked to rubber stamp the other decisions that have been made. And without the ability to collaborate, and I'm not even talking about the relationship building, which is extremely important. I just think that is a major facet missing with the Zoom meetings. And so even if we went to just 2 times a year, in my opinion, I don't think that's sufficient, because I think that because most of us, this is volunteer and we're not seeing each other regularly, there's just too many benefits from being in person. So I just wanted to say my piece. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a question. So is the only option on the table the one of, Zoom meetings and then 2 in person in LA? Is that the option?
That's what was proposed. If you look in the financial impact section, Amy added an idea that maybe we have people in the north get together in the San Francisco office and people in the south go to the LA office, and then we link the two electronically. So that's kind of like, it's somewhere between Zoom and full in person at one location. So that's another, I think you meant to solicit our opinions about that by putting that in there, didn't you, Amy?
No, I was trying to explore all of our options. I think one of the things that impacts that is, when we put this together, we didn't know what we know now, which is, whether, the executive order would be extended, which we still don't know, but at least exploring our options, like looking at alternative meeting spaces and so on. The idea that was raised was perhaps meeting in each of the offices, but as noted in the San Francisco office, we're not set up to be able to all be in one room. It would be individual, but it's just a way of addressing this gap. And the point in that memo about the financial concerns is that we really don't know what the financial impact was. So again, those were ideas related to the financial impact, but it wasn't a justification as to why we shouldn't be meeting. It was just exploring all of our options and what the financial impact is of each of those options.
Okay, thanks.
So
Yeah.
going back to the old one of alternating San Francisco, LA, San Francisco, LA, that's, forget it. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, because they're selling the San Francisco office and they're going to move to a space where it sounds like they're not planning on providing a meeting facility that would be sufficient for groups of our size. Is that fair, Donna?
Yep, that is fair.
Well, I'm gonna miss going to San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the perks with the lowercase p, I guess, right?
Mr. Gongora?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone for your comments. I had a question in regards to how we came up to the twice a year meeting. I think we're at roughly 8 meetings a year. more or less. I mean, I'm kind of estimating. So I guess, was there a logic or was there a some type of calculation that went into saying just twice a year, or and what meetings those would be?
Well, the chair would pick the meetings, presumably consulting with you folks, but as to where the number came from, I'll leave that to Amy or Donna, because I don't know.
I'll take that. So, so to be clear, what's being proposed is a consistent procedures and approaches for all of the sub-entities. And so it's not sort of a focus on CBE and we think CBE should only meet X number of times a year. So it's coming up with a consistent policy for all of them. And it does largely, as Paul surmised, it goes back to cost. The state bar saved in excess of $1 million, I believe, a year for not having in-person meetings, between the travel, the catering, all of those costs are fairly significant. And if you look at the final budget for the bar that was published at the end of February, our general fund had I think it was a $3.9 million deficit. The admissions fund had a deficit. And so this is a significant way to be able to save some money in a way that, as Amy said, like there were a lot of opportunities that we discovered with remote meetings, not just the very much increased accessibility for the public, which is something that we want to retain, but also things like, as Amy suggested, we can get bar exam graders from around the state in a way that we couldn't before, because we felt the need to do the calibration in person in San Francisco. And so bar exam graders in the past were heavily from the Bay Area, and that's not true anymore. So so there were real opportunities that we learned about, that we discovered when we were forced to be creative. But the cost is really significant. And again, it's not about CBE, it's sort of thinking about for all committees. And CBE meets 7 times or so a year. Other committees meet 4. Other committees meet 8. It sort of depends, but it was trying to figure out a way to rein in the costs, but still allow some of that team building and collaboration, the getting to know one another. And that's why there was a recommendation that some of the meetings be allowed to be in person, so that can happen.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate the elaboration. I mean, I'm sad to hear that San Francisco is going to go away, but whatever way, in-person meetings are valuable. I serve on other entities, and we've gone to in-person, and just like Bethany stated, having the subject matter experts in the room, having those real moments with public commenters is very impactful for me, at least. And so, you know, those are just my comments on it, but I'll definitely listen to the group and kind of see which way we could go.
Thank you. Mr. Siri?
Hi, guys. Let's see, the whole, I guess one of the proposal was having like the NorCal and SoCal groups meet at the respective regions and then elaborating on or trying to intermingle. My comment on that is that it's kind of was cool at first, but unsuccessful for sustainability practices and overall intent. I'm part of the California Lawyers Association, and we tried that for the Young Lawyers Association. And it was just, again, it was neat at first, but then it became just unsustainable in terms of developing good relationships and everything if we separate people by regions. I hearken the words of Bethany and Kareem in terms of in-person is just oftentimes better, and this is coming from someone who's very in tune with technology, and it's just something in which, yeah, it doesn't, I love the option and availability of Zoom or Zoom-like connection, especially for the public, especially for memos that are impacted and they can attend for the entire meeting. I mean, officers as well. It's just a option that I don't want to retract, but it should be in addition to. I do agree that we may be meeting too many times a year. Oh, not agree, but I'm just raising that up. That could be scaled back, but meaning twice a year seems a little too low. I think a happy medium might be 3 or 4 times a year, but that's just me. And the last thing I'll suggest is probably having more of a shift. For example, regional shift. It is to my understanding that we will only be meeting in the LA office, because as you said, the SF of San Francisco office is gonna probably shut down soonish. I still like the whole change of avenue and to allow people more options of not having to always travel down to LA, if that makes sense. I know that's more of like a stream of conscious what I'm doing, but those are my comments for now.
Thank you, Mr. Siri. So Paul, you mentioned earlier making some additional comments if necessary. I know that we've had like a little bit more comments and feedback from the committee members, but is there anything else you want to make mention of?
Oh, on this topic, I think we've covered it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the sense of the group is we would like to meet in person all the time, but certainly more than 2 times a year. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay, well, Alex and I can take that, and when the survey comes, we will pass that on. So,
Quick clarification, what do you mean all the time?
well, each meeting, all of them in person if we can get it.
Got it.
That's our preference.
I just have one thing to add. I do agree with it, what everyone has said so far. But one thing I want everyone to remember is we do crave for social connections, but we also crave for engagement. And today is a prime example where we barely make quorum, precisely because people are so used to virtual meetings that sometimes people can get away from engaging. And today is a very good example as to why in-person meetings should be prioritized over virtual meetings whenever possible. And I'm not in a position to say how many meetings would be sufficient, but I do believe that we need at least half the meetings in person so that people can actually connect and discuss some of the things on the agenda. Whereas when we conduct meetings virtually, that effectively takes away that opportunity. And today, like I said, we barely make the quorum, and that should be a warning sign that if we continue to go forward with meetings virtually, that we would potentially suffer from all the benefits that we could have had if we meet in person. So that's sort of my 2 cents. Thank you.
I have another question. So in other words, if we go back to all in person, and since San Francisco can't host, we're talking about all the meetings being in LA.
Sounds like it.
And that could be an issue for some people. I mean, I'll be bummed because I won't be able to go to San Francisco once or twice a year, but, I also live 10 minutes from the LA office, so it'd be very convenient for me, but I can imagine a lot of people would have a problem with that.
Well, good thing is in San Francisco, there are a lot of offices that can be leased on a daily basis, and they're pretty affordable. And a lot of startups do take advantage of that opportunities. Other than WeWork, there are a lot of office space, conference room space where people can rent it for cheap on a dollar. And so I don't think that would be an issue.
And
The only thing I would add to all the comments so far would be that in making a decision, and I know it's a balance. I understand it's a balance between the fiscal considerations and the benefits of in-person meetings, but I would hate to see the fiscal considerations overshadow the personal. It's I think uncontestable that the in-person meetings far outshadow the benefits of the Zoom meetings for all the reasons that have been mentioned. So I think part of it boils down to what is the philosophy of the bar in terms of its committees? What does it think of its committees? What does it want from its committees? And if you want the maximum from your committees, then fiscal impacts should not take firsthand.
Okay, so I think we have the sense of the group on that one. We have a couple more topic areas to cover. So should I go forward with those, Alex?
Yes.
Okay, so the next one is meeting procedures, including public comment. We really know nothing about what the consultant is going to recommend and the board may propose in regard to procedures. Public comment is maybe the one area where we can talk some about the substance of what we'd like to see. When you look at the draft public comment policy that Alex and I created in January, you'll see that what we were trying to do there was direct people to provide us written comments ahead of the meeting, and tell them that, and by way of encouragement, say that, we're going to limit public comment, oral public comment at the beginning of the meeting, which would encourage them. I think a written comment is more effective. They can choose their words as carefully as they need to. They can say, they don't have to limit themselves to however many words would take 3 minutes to speak, or 2 minutes. And we'll be able to refer to those comments more easily. Oral comments simply go into the Zoom recording, and I don't believe anyone ever transcribes them. So they potentially may have less effect, for instance. So that's another reason for somebody to make written comments. And then the other thing we were proposing in that policy was for items that affect a certain entity and specific entity. And really the only example that comes to mind are the law schools when they have either a petition or the results of an inspection are coming before the educational standards, on the educational standards portion of our agenda. We often have questions for the school, or we would like to. So our proposal was that we let some representatives from the school, up to 2, and any others who are necessary to answer our questions, speak to us and provide their comments at the time we consider the item, rather than say earlier in the morning. Quite often Ed Standards comes about lunch or afterwards. And then it also facilitates us having a dialogue with the school if we need to about some concerns or questions we have. But to avoid the case where school has a lot of alumni, for instance, that want to testify generally about the recommended action that's being taken regarding the school, we would direct those comments to the public comment portion of the agenda at the beginning of the agenda. Did I make that clear what the proposal is? Okay, thanks, Alex. What we're saying is this is what we were recommending as an appropriate way to deal with public comment. And if you agree, then we'll simply we'll use this and compare it to whatever the consultant might come up with, and comment about why we think they should go in the direction that we've set forth in our proposed policy. Does anyone have any questions about or comments about that particular aspect?
Well, I see Mr. Gongora's hand has been up for a while. So Mr. Gongora.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. That was what my questions was on. I guess kind of understanding that little better. I am in favor of a more extended public comment, not nothing upward of 5 minutes. I think 3 minutes was appropriate. The Brown Act has some language in there that's actually pretty beneficial when it comes to large groups coming to speak and kind of the chair having discretion on limiting. And I think the Bagley-Keene Act also has some of those parameters. So I guess I just want us to be mindful of ensuring that we provide opportunity for those conversations. If the, for instance, if the CS Bars has a an item that they're discussing, I think we agendize those so we could have a open-ended discussion and a back and forth. I think with the public commenters, the goal is to not interrupt their time and to provide them the opportunity to communicate to the bar on the matters that are important to them, but also not agendize. So I'm not too sure about the legalities of us engaging in public comments in that aspect or trying to limit public comments, but I just wanted to make sure I put that on the record.
Okay, yeah, and your sense that we are probably on the tighter end of the scale as far as what we allow is, I would share that. I should mention that we also put in the policy that if we have something like a major rulemaking, that would be another place where we could direct the public comment relating to that particular item to the time when we're considering the item. And it says what we would do is when such an item was on the agenda, we would specifically call out in the agenda that we'll be taking public comments on that item at the time we consider it.
Yeah, and the only issue on that, Paul, and I know I'm speaking hypothetically because we don't know where we'll be in a month or 2 or 3 months, considering our even known dynamics of the committee. But some of the issues that I've seen with that, and this is just because I've had long meetings on other committees I serve on, is that people will have to wait 4 or 5 hours, depending on the issue. So sometimes the chair with the discretion will say, hey, we're going to take this item first so we don't have people sitting here for 7 or 8 hours to discuss their comments. And so I just recently had a meeting a month ago that went for 8 hours and people had to wait to make their comments. So that's the only thing that is my feedback on that.
Okay, well, the next item may address that. We'll get to that in a second.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Yeah, okay. So any other questions or comments? Or you want to get a sense if you're happy or not with what we're proposing so we can go forward with that. Does anybody have any concerns about the proposal? Maybe we can ask it that way.
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, so then the next item is I called it time-specific agenda items. And let me read to you a statement that's on the current Board of Trustees agenda for next week. It says, the chair reserves the right to alter the order of items to run an effective meeting. If you wish to assure yourself of hearing a particular discussion, please attend the entire meeting. Kareem just suggested that that's unfair to the public. And I agree with him. I would almost characterize that as rude. And the example that I use to illustrate this issue is, again, it's a dean of the law school, representatives of a law school, who have to, because they're not sure when their items will be heard, have to sit through the entire meeting from the beginning, especially if we make them make public comments at the very beginning, and they have to sit through the whole thing because they don't know when a particular item is actually going to come up. So what we're asking about this particular issue is, would it be better, fair to the public for some items to set the starting time? For instance, on the educational standards agenda, we could say it's going to start at, today we probably would have said 11 a.m. given the amount of business we have. But I would think in a normal meeting where there's more business before ed standards, maybe we would say 1 p.m. And the only risk to us is that we finish all our other business before 1 p.m. and we have some downtime. But those people who are, want to comment about a law school item, or the deans, or people who are, say, interested in major rules revision, they know that they can just do other things until that time that we've set on the agenda, and then they can come and make their comments. So is that something that people, again, recognizing the risk that we might be twiddling our thumbs on occasion? But we can also always do things like, if we have a big gap, we can go into closed session for a while and deal with that business. And and then come back at the appointed time. Does that idea appeal to the group? Kareem is nodding his head yes, I see. Probably better for people to speak if they have an opinion. That we will record your nod of the head, Kareem.
I would just say I agree, and we offer that to our presenters sometimes, where we'll say, hey, we got a hard stop at 10:30 because so and so has a limited time schedule. So I think if we offer that courtesy, we should probably do it to the public as well. And I know per open meeting acts, if you post a time, it's kind of like maybe we could have some language as recommended time, just so we don't get into any kind of discretional issues.
Well, you can always start later. You just can't start earlier. And because once we start to get wishy-washy on it, then it loses its function, I think. So does anybody have a problem with that approach? If not, Alex could start to try that in our future meetings. And, it's not something we have to continue to do if we find it doesn't work. But I see that as and again, it serves the goal that the Board of Trustees are probably going to adopt next week in their strategic plan of increasing transparency and access to meetings.
Yeah, Paul, I don't see any other beyond just head nods, but.
Okay, then let's see. The final part is this strategic plan, and Alex, your choice. We've well, I guess I should go through this briefly. Do you think?
Yeah.
Because they could read it later. We're not really requesting any feedback on this, but it's more informational. So the back last year in maybe I forget the exact time, but Alex and I were interviewed together by a bar consultant who was helping them prepare their strategic plan for 2022 to 2027. It's a 5-year plan. And we were told later, we learned that that interview was basically the extent of the Committee of Bar Examiners' formal participation in the preparation of the plan. But we decided to take a look and just see what's happening there and report back to you, because we always have the option of filing either individual comments with the Board of Trustees, or if we did find something that we really thought we needed to provide input about, we could make a motion today, and then we could transmit that to the trustees. So they're on their agenda for next Thursday and Friday is adoption of a final plan. So in this memo, what I wrote was I highlighted and excerpted particular portions of it that I thought either kind of set the context for items that are within our bailiwick, or are statements that are specific to the issues that we deal with at the Committee of Bar Examiners. You can see those in the memo. There were a couple changes between this, which was pulled from their February draft that was presented to the Board of Trustees, and the final plan that was posted a day or two ago, attached to their agenda for next week. And I'll just mention a couple. One thing to note is, if you remember the concept of a diversity pipeline, that was where we were going to try to provide programs or make efforts. I think originally it started at the elementary school level to try to help potential lawyers be better prepared to make it all the way through the educational process and pass the bar exam and become lawyers. In recent times, that pipeline has been focused only on law school, the law school to the bar portion of the educational pipeline, and the new the new goals make that clear. Of the items that will probably come to us to do most of the work on would be to continue tracking and evaluate law school attrition data, aiding the law schools in developing improved approaches to retention and promoting common metrics. I guess for the purpose of allowing us to see trends, you need to measure things in the same way in order to compare things. Continue the Mindsets in Legal Education initiative and evaluate the merits of expanding that program. Another one is to conduct an equity-focused analysis of the impact of various options for administration of the bar exam on bar exam pass rates. I think in the previous draft it said, yes, it says increase the bar exam pass rate. This is a more nuanced description of that. But they want us to include in that analysis remote and open book test formats. And then provide implicit bias training for the bar exam proctors and graders to reduce any potential bias. And to continue to diversify the exam development and grading pool. So those are the ones I picked out. That's I didn't see anything where we we needed to say, hey, we have comments about that you need to hear about this. But if I'm just one voice, if does anybody else have any concerns that they want to put out to the group? Donna, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the characterization of the pipeline discussion. So the pipeline is long, right? Efforts need to be engaged in throughout the pipeline at elementary school, at high school, right? We've got the law academies in high schools, community colleges, undergrad. There is absolute recognition that there is work that could be done, that needs to be done from the beginning to the end of the pipeline. The state bar's focus was, the question that we had sort of posed was, where can we be the most effective? Where is the state bar uniquely situated that we can make a difference? There are other groups other organizations who are focused on other parts of the pipeline. And so our determination was that the place where we could make a real difference is starting at, is focusing largely beginning with law school, and then recruitment and retention, sort of in law school, recruitment and retention, in retention in the profession, advancement, career satisfaction, et cetera. So I just wanted to make that clarification. It's not that the pipeline has gotten shorter, or that we think the pipeline begins at law school. It's that we think that that's where the state bar can really be most effective and affect the most change.
Okay, thanks. I actually picked up that note that I made from what you said to the Board of Trustees back then, but that's a helpful clarification. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah,
make sure.
I was waiting for someone else to speak, so I wasn't the guy always commenting.
Don't be bashful.
I'm sorry, Chair, Vice Chair. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of these are very important topics to discuss. I wish we would have had more time, maybe, to kind of explore through it. I noticed they had taken a substantial amount of time to have this discussion at their meeting. So I guess for us now moving forward, it's kind of to identify what elements are important to the CBE and communicate that up, or was this the only opportunity we had to kind of provide comments?
Well, if you want to influence the plan that they adopt, this is the time.
Okay.
I'll just note that we'll be asked to conform our work plans at the CBE to these goals. It doesn't mean that's all we do, but they will certainly be expecting us to be working towards these goals. As I recall, the plan is occasionally amended over time. So,
Yeah.
If something turns out isn't working or working the right way, or there's something to add, we'll we can always send word up and see if they agree.
Yeah.
And then somebody needs, if you'd like, for probably a future committee of bar examiners, which will have very few of us on it, and when they go to do this again in 5 years, somebody could remember, I suppose, to have some little internal workshops and do the same thing, at least the same thing that Alex and I are doing here for this one. When we know our survey is coming, even if that's the only way we get to talk to the process, we can talk about things ahead of time so that we're better equipped to then, well, our successors are better equipped to respond to the, in the interview that we had last fall, which, hit us. I think it took a couple of weeks to schedule it, but we didn't know, frankly, I didn't know it was coming. And I don't think Alex did either, did you?
No, I didn't. So I see Ms. Peak and then Ms. Heisinger.
Yes, okay. I had a question about number or letter F, not a number, I know that. Paul, you had mentioned something about, I think you said like diversifying the pool for graders, but I didn't see that on here. And all I saw was, the implicit bias trainings. And so I didn't know if, well, first of all, did you say something about diversifying the pool for graders, or did I mishear you?
Yeah, it was continue to diversify it. I think it was added between the February version, which is what this memo is based on, and the version that's going to the board next week.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that was on there because I just wanted to speak my piece on this about, I think implicit bias training is nice and maybe useful, but for the effect that we're looking for, which is actually to reduce bias and increase diversity, I don't think that you really can train out bias or discrimination. I think that the better option is to diversify the pool of people that are actually writing and grading the test. And so I just felt like that is something that is important and worth mentioning or submitting for inclusion in terms of the goals.
Yeah, and I think when I don't think the grading team and the calibration sessions have to become in-person events again, and I hope staff has seen continuing those, the possibility of continuing those via Zoom as a way to at least provide more geographic diversity among the graders. And the other thing that also helps that is because now the exams are graded electronically, you don't have to physically come to the Bay Area to pick up your booklets to be able to grade them. It's all done online. So I guess you wouldn't even have to be in state unless that's a requirement for some reason. Dolores?
Okay. So back to the question of the public comments and the agenda and time certain and all of that. It seems to me that the majority of our agendas in the past couple years have been pretty steady. The amount of time that we devote to each agenda item is pretty much the same. I've seen agendas where they actually put the amount of time for each agenda item on the agenda. Doesn't have to be maybe to the public, but for ourselves, so that we also are encouraged to stay within that time period. If we did that, we'd have a better sense of telling people when their item might come up in terms of the public comments. And I would recommend saying an approximate time for that agenda item rather than a time certain, because if you do a time certain, then we will have to start playing with the agenda and moving things around. And I remember the days when I first came on this committee, it was impossible to follow the agenda because the chair didn't follow the agenda. We jumped from one thing to another, all over the map. And for new people on the committee, it was very difficult to figure out where we were. So an approximate rather than a time certain. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask people to tune in to a meeting a half hour or maybe even an hour before their agenda item comes on. 8 hours, yes, is much too much, but half hour, 1 hour, when it's something that is important to you, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. So I would not be in favor of making changes, drastic changes to the way we do business to accommodate public comments. But I think that there are things we can do to help people not have to stay on, tune in for a whole day of meeting just to address their public comment. If we go to a procedure where you have the public comments just before an agenda item is discussed. So.
Can I comment on one thing that Dolores raised? We sometimes have what we call our special sets when we have a presentation that's coming, a training. I think we also made, for example, our orientation a special set. So what that meant is we proceeded with the agenda, and those were specific times because we had a speaker from outside coming in to present or whatever the case is. That is, I think, one of the alternatives, Paul, that's implied in this, in setting the agenda for when we have outside speakers, right, is to make these special sets.
Yeah, well, this would be for other items too. We just say that, ed standards is going to start at whenever, 1 p.m. And Dolores, if we're not having to switch Zoom meetings, it's pretty easy to go in and out of closed session. So if we're in person, does the idea of using the closed session items as kind of the padding where we have extra time waiting for a time to come up? Because I think writing this description of, it's to define what approximate means would be difficult. I think it'd be easier, maybe we pick a time specific that's maybe a little earlier than when we think we'll get to it, but that still means that people can go do other things until that time comes, if that's all they're interested in.
I just think that we'd be putting ourselves in a real bind agenda-wise by making time certains for things. I think the committee would be the group that suffers from that.
Suffers because we just have time where we can't do anything, or
we have to jump around on the agenda constantly. I guess on the other hand, maybe if we know beforehand things that are coming up on an agenda that are likely to elicit a lot of public comment, maybe only on those agendas we would do the time certain, but not every meeting. I wouldn't say do time certains for each agenda item.
No, I don't think it would be for each. It would just be for kind of the major blocks. Maybe just ed standards, for instance, because those, unless we find ed standards, and if we had a big rulemaking about, let's say bar exam fees or bar exam rules or procedures, we might expect a lot of comment there. Even then, though, we'd probably set a limit and state it and encourage people to make their comments in writing. That's because it's also easier for us to consider if we have those a day or two ahead of time. We can read them, we can take them in at our own speeds, and probably appreciate them better than if we just have a lot of people wanting to make a comment. And then people also need to realize that we don't decide things, at least I don't, on the basis of how many people are against it or for it. We decide it on the merits, and don't count votes. Or in my opinion, that's the way we should decide things anyway. So stacking a public comment period with a bunch of people isn't, doesn't influence me in any particular way.
So I don't see any other hands raised or comments. Paul, any final thoughts before we move on to the director's report?
Just that we left a place in here if somebody, after reading especially Ms. Wilson's email, picked out another issue that they think we should talk about, wanted to allow them to do that. Your hand's still up, Dolores. Did you want to? Okay. So wasn't really expecting anybody to come up with anything, but wanted to offer the opportunity. So I guess with that, I don't think we need a motion. Do you, Alex? I think we have our marching orders and we will
Correct.
represent you when the survey comes.
And again, want to thank for everyone for all the feedback, and definitely the vice chair has put a lot of time and effort in compiling this information and presenting the details for you, all of you to consider. So just want to reiterate, everyone should have received that survey. Please complete that at your earliest convenience. The next item on our agenda is report from the director, Ms. Nunez.
All right, thank you, Alex. So the first item I have here is a review of the schedule for the April 22nd committee meeting. So currently, as you've heard, we've scheduled it. It's scheduled to be a remote meeting. However, as we've discussed, we're aware of the executive order that's set to expire in March. We're monitoring the situation. You have been surveyed. We're exploring all options to ensure that we're Bagley-Keene compliant and that we're able to proceed with our meeting in a way that the committee members are comfortable with. So more to come on that. As a reminder, as part of that meeting on April 23rd is question selection. So attorney members are invited to attend that session that Saturday. Next item is an update by Audrey about the February 2022 California bar exam.
Thanks, Amy. Make sure, oh yes, I'm not on mute. The February 2022 California bar exam was administered primarily on Tuesday, February 22nd and Wednesday, February 23rd, with a small number of accommodated applicants testing over extended days. This was our first return, as you know, to an in-person exam administration in 2 years. I want to first thank the applicants for their patience and attentiveness regarding the proof of entry requirements for the exam. The attention the applicants paid to the communications we sent out regarding vaccinations, COVID testing, masking, et cetera, really helped with the smooth check-in process at all our exam sites. I also want to thank the Office of Admissions staff for their hard work gearing up for and then administering the in-person exam with additional moving parts, many additional moving parts. The Office of Admissions is also grateful to other state bar staff who volunteered their time to help at the bar exam across the state to facilitate the additional check-in procedures. We approved and we're expecting 3,870 applicants across all the sites. And in attendance were 3,450. So we had 408 no-shows and 12 partials on those days. And that's my report, Amy.
All right, any questions so far? All right, then the next item is an update on the provisionally licensed lawyers program. These are statistics as of March 10th. And as you can see here, currently we have over 500 provisionally licensed lawyers who are still currently active in the program. And also want to highlight that about nearly 400 applicants have become licensed without needing to sit for another exam. I want to remind the committee that this program is scheduled to sunset on June 1st of this year. And in anticipation of that, we've sent reminders to the various provisionally licensed cohorts for those that were eligible for the program based on graduation date. We sent reminders before the February 2022 exam reminding them to register for that exam. And passing that exam would ensure continuity in their employment or the legal work that they're providing at the moment. So that reminder went out again before the exam. We've also sent reminders to the other cohort, that is those in the expanded pathway. As you recall, applicants in that program are allowed to, or can become licensed without needing to sit for another exam, as long as they've met a 300-hour requirement along with positive references. So we also sent a reminder to that group to let them know that the remaining requirements for licensing, such as having passed the MPRE, have been approved with, have their moral character application approved, and the remaining licensing requirements had to have been met by June 1st, 2022 as well. So that email reminder went out to that group. Any other questions or any questions or thoughts on any of these items?
Amy,
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that while I was doing the research for the item we discussed a few minutes ago, I noticed that the Board of Trustees was issuing for public comment some disciplinary rule additions that related to the PLL program. And I read them more for curiosity's sake, but I noticed that there was an inconsistency between two parts of the rules. Had a discussion with the bar attorney who's responsible for the project. And she agreed that there was that inconsistency and was going to see to making an adjustment when the rules go forward. So otherwise, we don't need to make any formal comment or anything, but I just wanted to say that we noticed that, or I noticed that on our behalf, in my individual capacity, and it's going to be dealt with. If anyone wants to know that, the details aren't important unless somebody wants to know them.
Thanks, Paul. Kareem, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this update. Do we have demographic information in regards to these applicants?
Yes, I will be bringing that to the next meeting as we get closer to the exam. I know that areas of interest have been, the backgrounds, the demographics for each of the cohorts, as well as those that are being admitted in the program expansion. So I plan on bringing those to the next meeting.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. Thank you both for administering this. And thank you, Paul, for your support in this. I think I've shared before that I actually know somebody that was impacted by this and it's changed their life. They've actually are now exploring this career direction and they went full-fledged, and and it was a person of color. And so I just want to speak to how powerful this program is, and just really thank the team for their work on this.
Thank you. All right. And we don't have any other items under my time, Alex, so I bring this back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Nunez. So I think we should take a break for 10 minutes. So looking at the clock now, and if we can actually return at 10:35 a.m. back into open session, we'll continue with the agenda from this morning. Thank you. welcome back, everyone. Give it a few more seconds here. People are coming back and turning on their cameras. And then with that being said, Ms. Nunez, I'm going to ask you to take a roll call again. Is that okay?
Yes, will do. All right, Alex Lawrence,
Here.
Dr. Bolton, Dr. Bolton. All right, welcome back. Robert Brody, Dr. Cow, Alex Chan,
Here.
Jim Efting,
Present.
Kareem Gangora,
Present.
Dolores Heisinger,
Here.
Judge Herman, Michael Asiri,
Here.
Larry Kaplan, Paul Kramer,
Here.
Esther Lynn, Bethany Peak, Vince Reyes, Judge Torrealba, David Torres, Dr. Wilcoxon.
This is Michael Cow. Sorry, I was having internet problems.
Okay.
This is James Bolton. Did you hear my response?
No, I didn't, Dr. Bolton. Thank you.
Okay.
And we have quorum. Sorry, I have 9. Is Bethany Peak back? Bethany, are you there?
I'm sorry you didn't hear me. I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. We have quorum, Alex.
Great, thank you. So the next item in open session is examinations. And as part of that schedule, there is going to be an update on the Blue Ribbon Commission. Unfortunately, Ms. Lynn, as part of that presentation, was called into court. She'll be joining us shortly this morning. So what I plan to do is let's move on to operations and management, if that's okay with you, Dr. Cal and Mr. Efting.
Sure. So Alex, did you want me to not present the report, or you want me to wait?
To wait. So let's go into O&M and Mr.
Okay.
Efting, and then I'll let you know, Dr. Cal, when we'll return back to examinations. So Mr.
Sure.
Efting.
Okay, so for examinations, an open session is, sorry, operations and budget, right, sorry. What we have is just the goals to be presented there, item 0300. You can hear me. So I don't know if everybody had a chance to review the goals. There really haven't been any changes since the last goals we discussed at the last meeting. So I'm willing to discuss any of them if you want to, but unless somebody has particular comments, I would suggest that we just have a motion to that the goals be approved. You want to break that motion or make comments?
I'll make the motion to move that the report on 2021-2022 operations and management goals be approved.
Thank you.
Michael Siri will second.
Thank you, Michael. Then can we have a vote?
Yes. Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan, Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Vince Reyes. All right, the motion passes.
Thank you. That's all we have for me, I believe.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Epting. So we're going to move on to educational standards with the Vice Chair, Mr. Kramer.
Okay. First off, we've got a bunch of items that are in some part of the inspection or the disciplinary, not disciplinary, but compliance process. So Natalie has a slide to just kind of highlight the basic steps in those processes and put it all in context for us, and then we'll discuss each individual item.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Oops. Let me put this up for you. Give me just a quick second. So at this time today, we're going to have schools that are in various stages of the inspection, more than we would usually have at once. And so I thought it might be helpful to talk through the process. And if people have any questions, they can let me know. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Thank you. All right, so for the most part, the procedures are similar, but not exactly the same between the registered and unaccredited and the accredited schools. And today you will see both. Primarily, San Francisco Law School will be the accredited school you'll be discussing, and the others are largely unaccredited. So when the inspection process begins, before an inspection report is presented to you at the committee, the school has an opportunity to respond, ask questions, and if needed, correct. After that process, the report is presented to you. If the school has a formal written response, that's also shared with you. At that time, you can choose to accept the report. You can choose to accept it with conditions, which is very common. The conditions are often in the form of a progress report, updating usually on a biannual or an annual basis. Or in the case of a registered school, the first step, if there is a significant problem, is to issue a warning letter. The school can again respond to any of those options and then proceed with the conditions that the committee places. When they respond, if that response is not sufficient to show compliance, then again, we branch. The accredited schools could be issued a notice of non-compliance directly. They're held to a very high standard. You move more quickly. Unaccredited, they are entitled to one more inspection. At that point, the committee can review the materials and proceed with the notice of non-compliance process and ultimately accept with conditions, impose probation, or terminate. This is a lot all at once. And so if anyone has any questions, as Paul is going through each of these inspections, I'd be happy to put this slide back up and just to be very clear about where the school is inside of this process. Paul,
Okay.
any other questions or thoughts while we have the slide up?
Well, just you'll notice that for unaccredited or registered schools, that means the same thing. There's a longer process, and one item that's coming up where the school has just been completely non-responsive will illustrate perhaps that that is too long of a process, and it is one of the things we will be looking at, whether that process should have fewer steps, especially in the case where somebody is not responding, as we this year and perhaps into next year look at the revisions to the registered unaccredited law school rules. Okay, so the first item is 0400, action on inspection of California School of Law. California School of Law is a for-profit registered unaccredited distance law school located in Santa Barbara. It enrolled 95 students in 2021. Heather Georgakis, the bar's educational consultant, and myself inspected the school in August of last year. The inspection report details a significant number of issues that we found and recommends issuing a warning letter to the school. The school has since responded quickly to address our recommendations, and staff does not recommend the issuance of a warning letter, but instead that we continue instead that we confirm continued compliance and improvement by way of an inspection to be scheduled in 2023. Key among the issues to follow up are the admission of students who do not demonstrate the capacity to succeed in the JD program and grade inflation. The recommended action is to receive and file the report and adopt its recommendations. Require a detailed progress report filed with the school's annual report in November, which I think we formally call in all the other items the periodic progress report, and then set an inspection for the summer of 2023. Do we have any questions about the details of the inspection or comments or the like? Get my screen here so I can see. Okay, no raised hands. Right, then a motion would be appropriate. Natalie or Audrey is going to put that up on the screen, I believe.
Yes, thank you.
This is Kareem. I'll recommend the motion to move. Do I have to read the whole thing?
Where are we these days on that, Amy?
Yes. We should read the motion, please.
Okay. So I'll move that the Committee of Bar Examiner receives and files the inspection report of California School of Law conducted August 4, 2021 and adopts its recommendations. Further move that the law school file a detailed progress report with supporting evidence documenting completion and continued compliance as to all recommendations as part of its 2022 periodic compliance report due by November 15th, 2022. Further move that the law school's registration as an unaccredited distance law school be continued and that the law school's next inspection be set for summer 2023.
Is there a second?
This is Michael. I'll second that motion.
Roll call.
Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn, Bethany Peak.
Yes.
All right, motion
Can you
passed.
hear me?
Yes,
Okay, cool.
thank you.
Okay, next is 0401, action on inspection of California Southern University Law School. It is a registered unaccredited correspondence law school that offers both a JD and a Master of Laws degrees. It is in the process of closing permanently. The last JD students are expected to finish this May, and the last master's students in 2023. Heather Georgakis conducted a regular periodic inspection in September. It highlighted areas where publications and policies required updating or creation. And the recommended action is to receive and file the report and adopt its recommendations, require documentation of implementation of the recommendations with a November periodic compliance report to continue the school's registration and set its next inspection for the summer of 2026, and require that the school advise the bar of its program end dates or any decision to admit new students. Any questions or comments? Audrey?
Paul, I have one comment that might be helpful for the committee. This school has a guarantee that they will keep the program open until the students finish their program. They haven't admitted new students since 2018. but some of the students have had delays during the COVID period, and as they're returning, they'll complete their degree. So that is unusual and might be helpful to know.
So it may mean that they have to stay open a little bit longer than we just said.
Possibly, I think that they felt that that was a firm estimate and they communicate regularly with the state bar regarding the timing.
Okay. Can't see the questions. What do I want? So here's a proposed motion on the screen, the recommended motion. Does anyone wish to make that motion? And if you do, please read it.
Mr. Kramer, may I clarify?
Sure.
If the motion is identical to what was included in the agenda item that was posted, you don't have to read it.
Well, I've always believed that, but it's been suggested that we do it. I think we have one or two members who are simply listening on the telephone, and I guess the thought was that reading it for them, and there may be members of the public in that same situation as well. But I agree with you that even those on the telephone presumably had a chance to view the item that was linked from the agenda and could see the motion there. So Donna's weighed in. Amy, are you willing to go along with that?
Sure.
Or Jean, do you have any problems with that approach of not reading the motion?
No, as long as it's identical to what was noticed, I think we're fine.
Okay.
This is identical to what was noticed.
Okay, now that you know that you don't have to read it, is anybody willing
I'll
to
make
make
the
a motion?
motion, Paul, now that it's much easier. Thank you.
Yeah, this was an intimidating one.
Yeah, I didn't want to tackle it, but now that it's brief, and I'll make the motion. This is Kareem Gangora.
And
We
I'll
have a se-
second it, Dolores.
Thank you.
Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Judge Herman, Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn, Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Vince Reyes. All right, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next item is 0402, action on response to notice of non-compliance for San Francisco International University College of Law. This is the one I mentioned earlier. This school is a for-profit, registered, unaccredited correspondence law school, first registered with the committee in April of 2017. Its first inspection took place in December of 2020 and over the following 8 months. The school did not comment when provided a draft of the inspection report. After we issued a warning letter in December of 2021 and received no response to the warning letter, in January, we issued a notice of noncompliance, for which we have also received no response. The next step in the compliance process is for staff to schedule an inspection, which does seem like a waste of time given the complete lack of response. And again, that's one of the things I think we should look at in the reviewing and revising the regulations. If they do not respond again, then the final step, probation or termination of the school's registration, can be considered by the committee at a subsequent meeting. The recommended action is to find the school has not responded to the notice of noncompliance, direct staff to schedule an inspection, and at its next meeting, if no inspection is scheduled, consider whether to terminate the school's registration. This case raises a general issue that may be ripe for further investigation by the committee. Where a school just disappears like this, how do we assure that the student records and other important information are preserved. For example, when a student applies to transfer to another law school or to take the bar exam. When we get to the subcommittee's goals, I'm going to propose that we put study of this question on the list of something the subcommittee should work on going forward. So with that, do we have any questions? See, I see none. I've got 2 pages now. No hands raised. Audrey? Does anybody wish to make the motion?
This is Michael. Make that motion.
And a second?
This is Michael Asiri. I second.
Thank you.
Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gongora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Judge Herman, Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn, Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Vince Reyes. Motion passes.
Okay. Next is 0403. Action on response to warning letter from American Heritage University School of Law. It is a for-profit, registered, unaccredited distance law school located in Rancho Cucamonga. Its first-year law students exam pass rate was 0% in October of 2020 and June of 2021, and 12% in October of last year, 2021. Its MPR, minimum pass rate for the bar exam itself, is equivalent rate is 12.5%. In December, after reviewing the report of an inspection begun in 2020, this committee issued a letter of warning regarding the deficiencies identified in the report. The school's response addresses some of the identified issues, but as to others, provides non-responsive or incomplete responses. The recommended action is to receive and file the response, find that the response does not establish compliance, and issue a notice of non-compliance, with the finding that the school is likely to be out of compliance, and therefore the committee intends to pursue probation or termination unless compliance is demonstrated. And further, to deny the school's request that was embedded in their response to forego teaching of legal research using hard copy materials. In other words, books and paper versus the online research services. Any questions or comments?
Paul, this is Kareem. I have a question, if I may.
Cool.
Do we know the enrollment of this school?
Let's see, Natalie, do you have that at the tip of your tongue?
You're on mute, Natalie.
I would need to double check, Kareem, but I believe it's a smaller school. I want to say that it is under 2 dozen students.
Okay. And so Natalie, the next process would be this notice, then an inspection, and then we would go into a more heightened process.
If the results of the inspection are not satisfactory, then yes, the school would go into a probation or termination condition.
Okay.
Okay. Natalie, from the staff report, it's way less than 2,000. It's 11 students in its JD program, which is down from 18 in that was the 2020 number was 11. It was 18 in 2020.
Yeah. Oh, Paul, I had said 2 dozen. I'm so sorry for the
Oh.
confusion.
Okay, sorry. Any other comments or questions? Audrey? Does anybody wish to make the recommended motion and second it?
This is Kareem. I'll make the motion.
James Bolton, second.
Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gongora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn, Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Vince Reyes. All right, motion passes.
Okay, next is 0404. Report on progress regarding recommendations from the inspection report of Taft University School of Law. Taft is a registered unaccredited correspondence law school located in Santa Ana. After the school's last inspection in the fall of 2019, the committee adopted 9 mandatory and 4 suggested recommendations. Completion of the recommended actions was to be filed with the 2020 periodic progress report. That report was filed late in the spring of 2021, reported completion of many of the recommendations. A report regarding the remaining recommendation was required with the 2021 periodic report, and that is the report that we are considering today. The recommended action is to receive and file the school's progress report and direct the school to file an additional progress report regarding mandatory recommendation number 3 and suggested recommendation 3 to address retention and attrition, to be filed with its 2022 periodic compliance report in November. Any questions? Audrey? You guys know the drill now.
My turn. Should I make the motion? Jim Efting?
This is Michael. I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gongora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan, Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn, Bethany Peak. All right, is Bethany Peak on?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. Motion passes.
Thank you. Next is 0405. That is a report on the progress regarding recommendations from the inspection report of San Francisco Law School, which is an accredited law school with approved campuses in Emeryville and San Diego. In January 2021, the committee placed the school on probation through July 1, of this year, because its 2020 minimum cumulative 5-year bar pass rate of 36% fell below the required value of 40% or greater. The school remains on probation and will report its MPR on July 1st of this year for discussion by this committee in August of this year. The school was inspected in February and March 2020 by a team of Heather Georgiakis, our committee member Alex Chan, Dean Mitchell Winnick of Monterey College of Law, and Interim Dean Robert Humphreys of Humphreys University. Some of the issues identified in this inspection report were addressed prior to the committee's consideration of the report in December of 2020. Those that remain were to be addressed in a progress report filed in November of last year. That is the progress report we are discussing today. While staff finds that progress has been made on most of the recommendations, some work remains. In addition, the current NPR probation cannot be resolved until after the next NPR report is made in July, and we consider it in August. Staff recommends that the committee receive and file the progress report, require progress reports on May 15 and November 15 until the school's next inspection, and that the next inspection be postponed from roughly now until the winter of 2023 in order for us to have the 2022 NPR report in hand. Any questions or comments? Audrey? Is there a motion and a second?
Jim Efting will make the motion.
Okay, motion Efting, second was that Cream or someone else?
Is there a second?
I'll make the second. I had a question. We received a public comment on this one. Oh, no, it's another item. My bad. Sorry about that.
All right. Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Bethany Peak.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Okay.
And Ms. Nunez, just to let you know, I think Ms. Lynn has joined us as well.
Okay. Esther, were you able, can you on the last item 0405?
I'll be abstaining. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, next is 0406. Report on progress regarding recommendations from the inspection report of People's College of Law. People's College of Law is a registered, unaccredited, fixed facility law school founded in 1973, located in Los Angeles. The law school focuses on preparing students to practice public interest law. January 2020 inspection recommended various actions to cause or enhance compliance with the standards and rules. The committee directed the school to file a progress report each year with its periodic compliance report. The latest progress report filed last December is before the committee today. Staff has outstanding questions regarding the compliance with several recommendations described in detail in the staff analysis and seeks the committee's assistance in obtaining responses to those questions. The recommended action is to receive and file the school's report and direct it to amend its report to address all items, all identified items in the staff report within 30 days. Failure to file a timely response may result in the issuance of a notice of noncompliance. Existing requirements to file a progress report with each periodic compliance report until the school is inspected again continue. Finally, the request or recommendation is to grant an extension of the waiver given to the school to the time to fulfill its library requirements to August 2022. The idea is right now, because of the pandemic, the library is not even open. So that doesn't affect any students, but they could be back in August. And at that point, we would want the library to be up to standard. Any questions or comments? Don't be shy.
Someone willing to make a motion?
Jim Efting will make the motion.
I'll second Kareem Gangora.
Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Epting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn,
Yes.
Bethany Peak.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. 0407 is action on a major change in operations related to Empire College School of Law and Monterey College of Law. This application has been withdrawn at the applicant's request, so therefore no action is required. My final item is 0408, and that's approval of the report of our 2021 to 22 educational standards goals. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd like to suggest adding a goal to investigate avenues for the archiving of student records from closed law schools. We had the one case today where, we're not getting any response out of the school, and that particular school didn't have a lot of students, so it's not the loss of the records isn't going to have a broad impact, but it may still affect some students. There may be no solution to this problem, but I think we should at least talk about it in a future time, whether, for instance, there's some way that the bar could take on, or somebody else could take on the task of holding on to the records so that they can be accessed if necessary down the road. It's not for discussion today, but simply to tee it up for future examination. And this certainly isn't our highest priority task. I wouldn't suggest that it's that, but if we get it on the list, people will start to think about it, and maybe we'll at least come up with an explanation of what can be done or what can't be done, and maybe put the questions that I know Natalie and I had when we were talking about the earlier item in preparation for the meeting had about what might be possible to get done.
Paul, might I suggest that staff be provided with the opportunity to create a well-worded and comprehensive goal to bring back to the committee at a future meeting in the near future?
Sure. That works for me. So with that, the recommended motion, I think, is to approve the goals.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Michael.
Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Epting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan, Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn,
Yes.
Bethany Peak.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Okay, that's it for me. Thanks.
Before we conclude educational standards, I'd just like to remind the committee and certainly the members of the public that next week on March 22nd, the State Bar will be hosting State Bar Day for law students. Law students will be able to hear directly from the leaders of many of the different sections and offices of the bar regarding anything that they want to learn about pursuing licensure. Students can sign up directly from the State Bar Twitter at State Bar CA, and there are still a few spots remaining. Advanced registration is required, and we do encourage as many students and applicants as are interested to join us for that lunch and learn on Tuesday, March 22nd. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Leonard. So looking at the next item on our list is moral character. I believe the chair is not available, Mr. Reyes, but will the vice chair, Mr. Chan, be willing to present the materials?
I'm sorry, Alex, can you say that one more time?
The next item on the list is moral character. Do you mind presenting the approval of the report?
Sure, give me just 1 second.
And while Alex is pulling that up, I can just note that the goals remain the same except for a little bit of a timing shift since this was a shorter meeting.
Oh, thank you, Tara. Yeah, so the report for this upcoming year, or for this year actually, is stated in the agenda 0500. So unless anyone has any questions about any of the objectives and goals, I would need a motion to have this received and filed.
So moved.
This is Bethany. I'll second.
All right, Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Ething,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn,
Yes.
Bethany Peak.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. And thanks everyone for being flexible on moving what our next item being examinations. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cow.
For examinations, so the section A will be the update on the Blue Ribbon Commission. Esther, would you be available to present that?
Yes, sorry about that. So I'm on the non-exam alternative subcommittee on the Blue Ribbon Commission. The subcommittee was primarily created to examine a non-exam alternative for graduates of California law schools only, including a short-term bridge program that transitions to a long-term option. And some of the questions that we evaluate are similar to what our committee of bar examiners have been looking into, including what is and how do we evaluate minimum competency if there's no exam? How do we ensure consistency? And also how do we ensure accessibility of this proposed pathway? In our review, we examined the state of Oregon's alternative pathways to licensure. Oregon expanded experiential training in their state school curriculum and also allows for supervised practice pathway for out-of-state applicants, as long as 1,000 to 1,500 hours of supervised practice are completed. We also looked into the Wisconsin Bar Examiner's Diploma Privilege and Canada's 8 to 12 months long supervised apprenticeship program. We looked outside of the legal field for persuasive models. So for example, we examined the medical school model, which focuses on skills and experiential emphasis along with exams. However, there are challenges in adopting the medical field's pathway to law because law students often have more non-traditional working law students. The medical field's hospital and industry rules also drive parts of their process. We've been trying to take into consideration CAPA's findings that include a list of skills necessary for today's young attorneys and that non-exam alternatives should be linked to these skills. CAPA also believes that the current exam coverage is both under and over inclusive. So the subcommittee that I'm on, we've been evaluating the potential idea of converting the provisional licensing program, which is set to expire in 2022. We're also looking into pathways focused on supervision and training. Right now, in my opinion, the majority of the subcommittee believes the non-exam alternative is viable and desirable, so long as accessibility, fairness, minimum competency, rigor, reliability, and validity can be balanced without sacrificing the integrity of the legal profession.
Thank you, Esther. Are there any questions for Esther?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead, Mr. Kramer. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead first.
I was just gonna ask, what's the timeline, I guess, to see all these things kind of come to a recommendation and potential implementation?
I believe we're supposed to give a recommendation by the end of this year or early 2023.
Thank you.
So first a point and then a question or comment. So one of the reasons why Alex and I wanted to get this scheduled for us is that this is through Esther and Alex Chan. They are our only voice in this process. The recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission are not going to be run by our committee for comment. I don't even think they're going to go to the Board of Trustees. They're going to go right back to the Supreme Court. So this is our opportunity to influence the course of this very fundamental and major potential change in the way the bar exam or the way people qualify to practice law in California is going to be conducted. So we wanted to, and if we wait till the end when it's time to give public comments to the Blue Ribbon Commission, you know, as a practical matter, in my experience in years and years of government, you know, minds are pretty well made up at that point. And, you know, if there's something just horribly wrong that we point out, it might change, but we will have a stronger voice and more influence in the process if we make our position clear to our two representatives here earlier in the process rather than at the end. So with that, I remain skeptical of the alternate pathway. But the one concrete comment I can feed to you, Esther and Alex, is that please don't model it on the PLL program and that alternative pathway there. I thought the 300-hour requirement for in order to qualify to practice without taking the bar exam for those who had scored in the past before the cut score was lowered above the new cut score. I thought that was way too short a time to assess the qualifications of a potential attorney. And I would hope, and I would also be concerned if we've just had random attorneys rather than programs that were, you know, sort of vetted and were applying standards, you know, set standards to their review and qualification of these people.
Thank you, Paul. And I can definitely give the subcommittee the input from the committee of bar examiners.
And let me give the CBE my report on what we have done. Again, I'm on the subcommittee for the exam pathway, so I will speak on what that subcommittee has done at the last meeting on March 2nd. At a very high level, we spent the last several months examining what that future exam should look like. That achieves three things: our mission, demonstrates minimum competence, and also provides for fairness and equity considerations. And as part of that process, we looked at other forms of admittance to other jurisdictions, and they are what we call reciprocity and portability. This really requires us to look at what exists today and what could exist in the future. Right now, there are two forms of admittance to another jurisdiction, including admission by transfer of the UBE score, as well as admission by motion. In some states, they call it AWOX, or admission without examination, which is really a motion in the form of an application to a particular state bar and requires no exam. And on the UBE fronts, we are one of roughly 10 jurisdictions that have not adopted that exam. And as part of the effort in looking at all the possible options, the subcommittee also studied NCBE's next gen exam and compared it against the California specific exam. And in studying the differences, we studied quite extensively on issues relating to three specific areas, and they are remote administration, exam cost, and also participation on DEI efforts raised to the exam. And DEI, as some of you may know, it's just an abbreviation for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so for the NCBE Next Gen exam, we found that NCBE allows for a remote administration as it uses test centers. So applicants who have limited internet connectivity or limited access to a workable laptop could use those test centers. But we also found that exam modality and content design for the Next Gen exam have a lot of unknown impacts on costs, and also remains unclear whether the applicants would be paying more or potentially less than what they're paying now for the California exam. And also on the third area, the DEI efforts, obviously, the Next Gen exam will require NCBE approval on anything related to DEI, which, as you can imagine, could potentially impose both political and financial issues to us, the state bar. Now, on the other hand, the California specific exam provides for a number of positive things like greater flexibility, right, to determine exam modality, as the CBE and the Board of Trustees have statutory authorities on making recommendations to the state bar and the Supreme Court on how best to design and model an exam. But for the cost perspective, it is still not entirely transparent, though I think it will likely depend on exam design and content, which again is the next area of exploration for the commission. And finally, remote administration for the California exam remains the one area of improvement. As we all are, everyone is aware, technical glitches, privacy concerns, and memory issues form the basis for most of the complaints, basically in the past, in the context of remote software. And so to make this a reliable option, it's going to require that all of these issues to be addressed and resolved. But without a doubt, there is going to be some great flexibility to innovate. In addition to studying the fairness and equity issues for both the Next Gen and the California specific bar exam, the subcommittee also studied the exam contents as part of the comparison. For example, what should the exam look like in order to achieve our mission? What does the demonstration of minimum competence should look like? Well, for the Next Gen, the content of the exam is still unknown, and I do believe NCBE is still working on the contents. And so right now, we just don't know what that exam will look like because it hasn't given us a lot of info. But we do know that the Next Gen will contain knowledge, skills, and abilities, or what we call KSAs, specific to NCBE, which are likely comparable to the California specific exam. On that note, it is worth noting that the Blue Ribbon Commission, it's not commissioned, or at least to my understanding, we're not commissioned to design the exam or determine a cut score. And I'm sure Amy can touch on that later on. I'm sure, this is the area where psychometricians and others will come in and they'll be responsible for that. But the state bar and the Supreme Court staff have identified certain areas that would be appropriate for their commission's recommendations to the Supreme Court, including areas like knowledge, right? Knowledge or subjects to be tested, skills to be tested, and also the percentage of the exam that is testing knowledge versus skills, and also whether attorneys from other jurisdictions or foreign attorneys need to sit for the full exam. And so in the months ahead, the commission will look to answer these questions. At the end of that meeting a few weeks ago, the exam pathways subcommittee had a motion and moved to continue to pursue the use of a California specific exam. So not the NCBE Next Gen, but the California specific exam reflecting the CAPA recommendations that explores all of the issues I just talked about, while leaving the door open to monitor the validation of the Next Gen exam. And the full commission passed that motion. And so with this motion being passed, there are two outstanding items that are in front of us, and they are exam contents and exam modality. And this is where I think the CBE comes in is to guide us. And perhaps what I think would be appropriate at this point is to get people's feedback, to voice your opinion on what you think, what you believe is the appropriate course for us to recommend to the full commission. The pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages, and how either or both pathways would impact our work as the CBU. And I will say this on behalf of Esther and myself, who would certainly like to receive your input, any guidance on which direction that the CBU would like to share with us that the CBU should take, so we can lay it all on the table, either at the next meeting with the full commission or at the final vote. So with that, I will pass the baton back to Alex Lawrence and Paul Kramer to see if anyone has any comments and inputs about what we have done so far.
Thank you, Alex, for the presentation. Are there any comments or questions for Alex?
Yeah, I have, Mr. Kramer raised his hand, so I'll allow him to go first.
No. You started talking first. Go ahead.
Sorry, Paul. My
That's okay.
apologies. So first of all, Esther and Alex, I appreciate your report. And thank you, Paul and Alex, for kind of putting a pin on this so we could make sure we prioritize this conversation. Because this is probably the most important level of work that's taking place. And I know we do have 2 representatives, and I understand that we might not have another bite at the apple. But I guess, Alex, and based on what you presented, a lot of my concern has been over time is like what we're specifically doing to kind of make the bar exam more accessible, make it in an instance to where we are actually diversifying the bar, and kind of what measures are being taken place. I know you've probably reviewed a lot of data and things of the sorts, but how does the committee plan to address the financial barriers that we've learned about that impact people actually accessing and being able to sit for the bar, and then having to take very expensive courses to essentially have a better opportunity at the bar. So I guess in essence, I'm just worried about the financial impacts that are occurring and kind of straddling students with debt.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think cost is one of the factors that we considered in comparing the cost that an applicant would incur for the California exam versus the next gen exam. I think this is certainly a factor that we looked into, that we still believe that in the totality of circumstances that the California specific version is still better off than the next gen version. Now, as far as how much that will cost, and I think I alluded to that earlier, that also depends on a number of factors. For example, design contents, and until we have that down, it's very difficult to imagine or to come up with the costs, how much it's going to cost for an applicant to study and prepare for the bar exam. But I can say for sure the commission is looking into this factor substantively and extensively. And again, there's still a lot of work ahead of us. And I'm sure this is one area where we're going to have to drill down into and get to the bottom of before we can vote, which pathway to pursue. So I can assure you that, and I will make sure I voice that opinion at the next meeting as well, is to, assess, how much at their end will cost an applicant, to pay out of their pocket. But if Amy has any additional comments on this issue that I'm not privy to, Amy, please chime in as well.
Oh, yes. I just want to add a couple of things. Cost is one of the factors that we have categorized as in the same context that you have, as a fairness and an equity issue. So, again, when we looked at methods for reducing costs, remote administration was one of the ideas that reduce costs. We presented that here before, and we presented it to the Blue Ribbon Commission, that we definitely, most administrations have had a remote administration and an in-person, identified a cost savings in the remote administration. And so it's definitely something that we don't want to lose sight of, but as also that Alex has mentioned that while we don't have a content yet, that is one of the considerations that we need to keep sight of. The other thing is what we've looked at in regards to fairness and equity is also we've had presentations conducted by psychometricians at the exam. And so, we're not at a point that we have the content established yet. But what we do know is that we've looked at things like question type bias and looking at, for example, the exams that are cognitively loaded. And the bar exam is one of those exams. It's a lot of items are being tested at the same time. Legal knowledge, writing, research, investigation, an exam design that counteracts that is alternatives like scenario-based assessments, structured interviews, oral assessments, or performance-based assessments like simulations. And that's one of the considerations that we have in terms of the exam design, is looking at those alternatives so that the research that has been demonstrated and that we heard from psychometricians is that these cognitively loaded exams create a performance difference with communities of color. And so this is a way of reducing some of that and eliminating some of that potential question type bias. So it is something that if we went with the California specific bar exam, something that we could closely look at. And so the other item I wanted to add in general is that since our last meeting with the Blue Ribbon Commission, we have gotten a little bit more insight and specificity on what the both exam and non-exam pathway will be looking at. So we have a meeting that's scheduled on April 6th, and this is going to be dedicated to looking at the exam pathway. So the broad question that the exam pathway has had to answer is, do we want to go with the California-based exam or adopt the next gen exam? And as part of that, other questions that the exam pathway are going to be asked to discuss are the knowledge, that is the subjects that should be tested, and these should be based on the CAPA recommendations. Also, what skills do we want to test in the next version of the bar exam? What proportion of the exam should be testing knowledge versus what proportion should be testing skills? Also, how do we treat attorneys from other jurisdictions? Do they need to sit for the full exam, or are we open to the recommendation or to the idea of reciprocity? As for the test administration itself, things like whether we should have a remote, open book, that will we discussed. We are going to rely. We've had professionals that focus on this, expert test developers. We want to bring them in to address some of these, and with an eye towards reducing differential performance and all of the items that we had just talked about earlier. So I just want to. That is something that's relatively new, and it's coming up at the next meeting. So.
Thank you. That I was very, very in-depth and elaborate, and I appreciate the careful thought to it. I guess for me, kind of what I envision, and of course, it's because with any kind of shift in examination, there's a cost impact, but then there's more so a transition of the ancillary support that students receive from vendors that provide them tutoring and things of the sort. So I know for sure, like when it's decided and whenever they decide to move in this direction, like the whole boat that's kind of moving this direction is going to have to shift as well. So all the schools will have to adapt, all of everything has to adapt. So I guess, is there a transition period that's being decided, or is that something going to be done at a different level?
When we're the content and the modality, as we get closer to that, we will be in communication with the law schools, because if there's a rule out there that states if the exam changes a way that curriculum changes, we need to give advance notice to the law schools and students generally about that. And so, you know, we plan to adhere to that. In that sense, that will be addressed. And obviously, you know, we want to provide students and law schools enough or applicants enough information about, you know, the format of the exam, like we do now with the bar exam, where we have on our website basically a scope of what's covered during the bar exam. We would be doing the same thing with a new version of the exam.
Yeah, because like, think about it, like how many historical references we have for the SAT, right? So I remember when I was in school, there was like so many sample packets that we could take to kind of prepare ourselves. And so I'm envisioning for this, whatever becomes the new exam, we might not have that content that would be able to prepare students. And the people who will be prepared are the ones who have the finances to do it. So that's where my questioning was going, along the line of resource cost, for the most part, being an additional barrier, even though we're trying to create an exam that's more accessible and more adaptable to the growing industry and its evolvement. There could be an unintended consequence where we don't have enough source material to prepare students with lesser resources to actually be prepared. But that's me just thinking hypothetically. I remember when the whole education system went from standards to Common Core, there was like a 3-4 year delay because resources weren't coming down to the classrooms. There wasn't a preparation. And so what ended up happening is you have like a gap of 3-4 years of children that were kind of essentially left behind in communities of color because of that disconnect with policy and actual implementation and resource allocation. So that's just me thinking kind of historically, but I know Alex Chan's a brilliant individual. He's someone that I trust, and Esther as well, and you, Amy, as well. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me and to provide very meaningful feedback.
Okay, my turn, I guess. So Alex, I know Kim sent out something earlier this week, and we could sign up for some kind of presentation from the national conference about the new our next generation bar exam, and I did sign up, and I'm looking forward to hearing about it. But when it sounds as if we're comparing something we really don't understand the details of to our own exam, which seems like it could hamper our ability to make a really well-informed decision. What is it that the committee or the commission currently knows about that exam?
So in terms, you mean the contents or just over scope? Because
just what basic things, like for instance, if we lose the multi-state component, and I think somebody told me that may not be a part of the new the next gen exam. That's how we calibrate our essay test scores. It would seem to me that could be a real fly in the ointment, at least, for continuing our own exam.
Yeah, so there are a number of issues with the next gen exam. Clearly, validation is going to be a key factor. And without all the information, it will be very difficult for anyone, much less the commission, to validate the exam for our own use. And that's why the motion that we made a few weeks ago really hinged on continuing monitoring of the validation and exam. I think, again, there is still a lot of work involved, and we're still monitoring the contents and the scope of the exam. And right now, as much as I know, and I'm sure Amy might have a different idea, but I just don't believe we have enough information as far as what NCBE is planning on testing at this moment. Maybe I'll just leave it at that, because I don't want to speak out of turn here. Amy, if you have anything you want to add, please do so.
Yes, that Paul is one thing that he was suggesting is that the MBE will not be the MBE that in the next gen exam, the MBE that we have now, and that's correct. I think that The idea is that the move for the next gen exam is to have a more, I think more questions like the performance test question, I think is the attempt. And in that process, as they're developing the content, one thing we know is that the MBE, a multiple choice section, may not be part of that. It's going to be a holistic, a different approach, and we will not have access to the MBE when the UBE transitions to the next gen exam.
So that may make it hard for us to calibrate, or rather to scale our portion of the exam, because we will lose. That was kind of the anchor, as I understood it. And does anybody have any concrete plans for something that could replace that function?
Yeah, you're correct. That's one of the considerations in the exam development portion of the discussion is how do we handle that scenario? Even if we moved on, we're looking at if you look at the next gen implementation plan, they plan to have an exam in place by 2026. So we need to have a plan for the implications in the event that the California bar exam, if we go that pathway, if we have not established that, right? If we don't have our exam ready, our new version of the exam, what do we do exactly as you suggested for our scaling process, because that is critical. So, we're looking at all of our options for being able to do that, and including the development of multiple choice questions for the bar exam in California.
Okay, so my final bit of feedback for the moment to Alex and Esther is, if you feel like the process is moving faster than the information as being made available to make a informed, solid choice, please call that out and make the case for more time if that's appropriate.
Yeah, so Judy Gunnarsson actually made a presentation way back, I believe on back in December, a few months ago, on what the tests will look like, the next gen. And she covered a lot of high level areas, what she called the level 1 area, which is really about general familiarity of the law, and also level 2 area, which is more about the detailed knowledge of the substance, the legal resources and whatnot. But again, everything is very high level at the moment. And so, without her telling us exactly what the content is going to look like, it would be hard for even the psychometrician to measure the impacts, right, on our scoring. But I do understand, based on her presentation, that the NCB is planning on publishing a draft test for stakeholders to comment and to receive feedback. I don't know when that will be ready, but I'm sure that's one thing we'll look into and scrutinize closely. But like you said, we'll get back to you as soon as we hear anything from MCB on that front.
Great, thanks.
Are there any more questions or comments for Alex and Esther?
Yes, I have one.
Go ahead.
Again, Esther, Alex, thank you so much for your involvement with the Blue Ribbon Commission. As always, you always provide an amazing detailed report and concerns. So thank you. I think previously, I believe Kareem was mentioning about the cost and how that may be a factor. And I may be sounding a broken clock, but I always have this on my mind. I'm just more cautious in terms of the high level comment about developing, the familiarity, detailed knowledge of substance that we testing and everything. And I always want to push back about there should be definitely more time, because any finalization needs to incorporate, not even finalization, it should be on the inception of, to make it legally accessible. This is more of me tilting about, individuals with disabilities in testing competitions. Not oftentimes I see that as an afterthought about, oh, we can slap on testing competition stuff. But since we creating something new from the ground up, it should be factoring in how can we make it easier for individuals to take the exam. I'll wrap this up as in people often think of WCAG, which is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, as just something you slap on at the end of the process, when in fact it can dramatically improve and actually fine tune the user design and the overall user experience for everybody if you think about it at the inception level and having it throughout the process. To wrap it up, my main concern is I love that costs and other factors are looking at right now. I'm just very cautious about, is it going to be not only legally accessible in terms of testing competitions, but also is it just the intent is to make it better? And by making it better, I say in a broader sense of accessibility. That's it.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any other comments or questions for Esther and Alex? Okay, so if there's none, we're going to go to section B of the examinations subsection. Going to talk about the agenda item 0200, which essentially is unchanged from what was discussed before. And so if there are any questions or comments for that, I'd like to get a motion to go ahead and approve the report on the 2022 examination subcommittee goals.
Dr. Cal, this is Kareem Gongora. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Kareem. Is there a second?
This
I'm
is
sorry.
Bethany, I'll second.
Bethany, second. Oh, thank you, Bethany.
All right, Alex Lawrence,
Yes.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gongora,
Yes.
Dolores Heisinger,
Yes.
Michael Asiri,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan, Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Esther Lynn,
Yes.
Bethany Peak.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
And this is Judge Herman. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, like we could, Judge.
Well, I've been on the call all morning, and I'm sorry, I didn't know that in addition to, because this is my first phone in, I didn't know I had to press the *6. So my
Okay.
apologies, but I was in favor of all the motions that were made this morning, so.
Okay, so including 0200.
Correct.
All right, thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Cow. That concludes all of our open session items. But before we move into closed, I wanted to recognize Miss Sonia Dalen. Hope I pronounced that correctly. She is our liaison from the Board of Trustees. I should have done that earlier in the session, but I definitely wanted to recognize her. And I don't want to put you on the spot if you want to say anything, but I see you waving, and again, appreciate you joining our meeting and open session this morning.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here, and thank you so much.
So for the committee members, we're going to go right now. I'm looking at the clock. It's 11:55. I propose that we break for lunch and return at 12:30 p.m. into closed session. But Ms. Nunez, you have a comment?
Yes. So Alex, we're scheduled to end at 1. Would it be possible to make it a working lunch? As my suggestion, only because we have a few more items.
Sure. So what does the committee want? If we can maybe take a 10-minute break and have a working lunch, or would people be open to that? Let's do that. Let's take a
Yes.
10-minute break. Good, I hear a yes. Let's take a 10-minute break, return at 12:05 p.m. and then we'll make it a working lunch. So, but you can go, let's return in closed session. Okay. You can look for an email from Ms. Wong with the subject line closed session, and it has the Zoom link to go into. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. Meeting business has concluded. Is there any more business? Haven't seen none. Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Everyone, have a great weekend. Take care.